Good morning. After a difficult year of revolving closures, our children need a real education recovery that makes sure no students fall between the cracks. That means providing students with mental health supports, special education supports, and more individual focus in class with their teachers. Our education workers need to be supported, and we need to make sure that in person learning is here to stay. We know for a fact investing in our children now will reap benefits for decades to come. A real education recovery will help drive a strong economic recovery for decades to come. Every dollar we invest in education returns $1.30 to the economy. That means investing in education now is investing in a strong economy tomorrow. I'm excited to welcome the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, Stephen Del Duca, to discuss our education recovery plan. Stephen, I'll pass it on to you.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much, Amber. I really appreciate you giving me the chance to be here with you in Ajax, if I can put it that way, lovely Ajax on the edge of Toronto. I know, of course, this is taking place virtually, and I am very much looking forward to being physically back in Ajax with you in the weeks and months ahead. And I have to say, I'm absolutely thrilled that you have stepped forward and that you are the nominated Ontario Liberal Party candidate for Ajax. As a fellow 905er, I know that the people who work so hard, the families who work so hard in Ajax, need a true champion at Queen's Park, someone who understands the neighborhoods, who understands the people who live there, who is from the community, who feels it in their bones. And you, Amber, you will be an exceptional MPP for the hardworking families of Ajax come the next election. And I know how hard you're already working with you and your team to reach out, make the contacts, and help us and help me put together an education recovery plan that will actually work. And for those on the call who don't know this, Amber brings incredible expertise to the advice and the guidance that she's been providing me and the team. She is a frontline education worker. She is a mom with young kids. She sees it, she feels it, she knows it. And Amber really has helped, along with the rest of our team, to put together a recovery plan that gives me, as a dad whose daughters are in grade 8 and grade 4 currently here in York Region, gives me the kind of peace of mind knowing that we can have a safe restart in September and that we can build a resilient and strong publicly funded education system that truly recovers to set our kids up for success. So just a couple of the key highlights from the Ontario Liberal Education Recovery Plan. Number one, we know how brutally tough this past year has been for kids across the system, nearly 2 million kids who attend publicly funded schools in every corner of Ontario, including in Ajax. We know how tough it's been for their moms and dads, for teachers, and for all of the other women and men who work within publicly funded education, from custodians to school bus drivers, principals, school board trustees, the list is endless. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Ontarians who pour their heart and soul into our publicly funded education system. And along with moms and dads and students, it's just been such a tough year. So the first thing that I'll highlight is that we really believe that the upcoming summer that's scheduled to start, of course, at the end of school in just a few days. My daughters are really excited about the end of school just being around the corner. We need this to be a summer of fun and a summer of play for kids right across this province. Obviously, summer camps and other recreation programs have started to reopen and prepare for July and August. But we also know that there are tens of thousands of Ontario families that don't have the resources or the access to that kind of summer programming. So our plan calls for a significant investment that would reduce the cost burden for those families, assist them with access to that kind of summer programming. So literally kids can just get outside and breathe and remember what it's like to be a kid again and see their friends and be safe and be healthy. I think that's an essential part of making sure that we get September right. Secondly, I've noticed over the past more than a year that there are so many people, as I said a second ago, who work in publicly funded education who've wanted to help give Doug Ford and his government advice and guidance about how to take the best healthcare policy and I'll say translate that into an effective running of our publicly funded schools, again, right across Ontario. And what I've experienced is that all of those women and men have not had the chance to engage in a genuine conversation with the current government in order to make sure that we're at our very best, that our kids are set up for success. So I am urging, and look, if I was in the job right now, if I'd earned the trust of the people of Ontario and was premier today, this is what I would be doing. I would be talking to those who represent the women and men working on the front lines on a regular basis, engaged in authentic consultation to make sure that we're actually getting it right. Like, for example, I've never worked in a school. Amber has. Amber is a proud frontline education worker, but I've never worked in a school. So it's great for me to have all the wonderful ideas at a sort of abstract high level, but if they don't translate well to a kindergarten class or a high school class or what's taking place in a common area like a cafeteria or a gymnasium, then the plan is doomed to fail. So consultation and starting up again, the Education Partners Roundtable is something that I'd be doing right now if I was Doug Ford today. The third thing, we know, and the Ontario Liberal Plan for schools for September 2020 called for bringing class sizes down to 15, because at that point in the pandemic, we wanted to make sure kids were physically distant. And so they, for physical safety and for pandemic safety reasons, we had talked about capping class sizes at a much lower level. With the pandemic being at a different stage and the vaccine rollout, thank goodness, coming along nicely, and kids 12 and over having access to vaccines and hopefully having access to both doses by September for those who want it. Now, I now believe, and this is another cornerstone part of our plan, that we call on the system to create a class size cap of 20 right across the board. And the reason for that is partially physical safety. Of course, we still want to make sure kids can remain physically distant to the extent that it's required. But it's also because we know, and all of the evidence shows, that when teachers and the rest who work in the system, early childhood educators, special education professionals, mental health professionals, when there is a direct interaction, direct instruction coming from those professionals, all of them, and our kids in reasonably manageable numbers, our kids excel and the system performs the way that we all need it to. So capping class sizes at 20. Last two things that I'll point out. We've heard this loudly and clearly through all of the consultations that I've done over the past year. Far too many schools in Ontario, in fast-growing communities like Ajax and elsewhere, still don't have proper ventilation. We know that many, many months ago, the federal government provided significant hundreds of millions of dollars to the provincial government to help deal with some of those physical challenges. Our plan calls on the province to step up, make a similar investment, and actually make sure by the end of August, heading into September, that our schools, our publicly funded schools, have the ventilation systems in place so that, again, moms and dads have that peace of mind knowing that their kids will be breathing clean air and safe air and healthy air. And that's something that's really important to me, and I know to so many others. And the last thing, and Amber touched upon this, special education and mental health. We need a real assessment of exactly what kind of learning gaps we have, our students have right across this province because of how tough this past year has been. But we also know that there are thousands and thousands of kids who have special needs. That's why our plan calls for a massive increase in the number of special education professionals, about one per school, slightly more than one more per every school in this province, to help those kids that have different disabilities, different special needs, to actually help them again excel and perform and be successful. And we all know, regardless of age, because this past year plus has been so grueling for people right across this province, we know that mental health challenges in every age group are skyrocketing, and our kids are not immune. And again, that's why our plan, the Ontario Liberal Plan for Education Recovery, has funding and additional supports in place to provide mental health professionals and supports for those kids and others who work in publicly funded education, so that they can get the kind of mental health help that they need. So these are some of the key highlights within this plan. I have to say, I'm really proud of this one. When I think about this, when I think about the parents that I speak to, when I think about my own daughters in the system right now, this is a plan that truly will set all of them up for success. It will mean that our schools are performing functioning at a very high level, which, as Amber said in the opening, means really good things for Ontario's economy. Again, let's stress, the Conference Board of Canada said that for every dollar you invest in publicly funded education, that you effectively invest in publicly funded education, it returns $1.30 back to the economy. So this is good for Ontario's families. It's good for our kids. It's good for our economy. It's good for all of us. I'm really proud of this one. Really proud to be working with Amber, who is going to make a great Ajax MPP. after the next election. I know she's going to keep working hard. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that any of you might have. Thanks so much.
Okay, just a reminder to the reporters on the line, if you have a question, please raise your hand using the Zoom function or write to the chat and I will call on you. And the first question is Steve Paikin from TVO.
I think I'm here. Good morning, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning,
Excellent.
Steve.
Thank you. The cap of 20 on class sizes, is that a new permanent thing or is it only during COVID times? And if so, how long does that last?
You know, so it's a great question, Steve. I will tell you as a dad, and I keep stressing this, when I think about the class sizes my daughters have experienced, well, since they started school, which have been above 20 in both cases throughout. Nothing makes me, I guess, more excited than the notion that under our kind of plan, they'd be in a classroom starting this September, physically in person in a classroom starting this September with a class size capped at 20. Now, we've set this up to be designed for this coming September and for the upcoming school year, just like we did last July of 2020, when we came out with a one-year plan for publicly funded education to have a safe restart. But I will tell you, I am a really big believer in smaller class sizes. So I have a funny feeling that when Ontario Liberals release our overall publicly funded education plan as part of our platform, that you're going to hear a lot in there about class sizes and a lot of the other things that I've already talked about in today's presentation. But I also want to make sure, and this is why consultation is so critical, I want to make sure that we have those women and men who have true expertise in being able to design a plan that will assess what the learning gaps look like, so that those women and men with their expertise, including people like Amber, can tell us, look, class sizes have to stay smaller, and that might have to be for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. So I'll get back to you in terms of what the long-term horizon looks like as part of our platform. But what I know, given the learning gaps that we have right now, given how many kids I fear have fallen out of the system during this pandemic, given that we haven't even assessed what those gaps look like, and given that we need to hit the ground running come September, I'm prepared today to commit to 20 for this September. And when we release the rest of our platform around education, we'll have more to say about the longer term.
Okay, thanks. And my follow-up is, and this is not on the topic of today, but I haven't had a chance to ask you about this yet. Have you seen the NDP attack ads against you? And if so, what did you think of them?
Yeah, I've been made aware of them. I didn't have a chance to actually watch the ad in its entirety. Look, I've said this all the way through. You know me, Steve. I know politics. I know how it goes. I know politicians, political leaders like to get their elbows up. I know the playbook that's existed now for decades here in Ontario and elsewhere. My job as Ontario Liberal Party leader is to make sure that we are ready for an election campaign that's now less than 11 months away, while at the same time holding Doug Ford to account. I think that it is, look, the people of this province have been through such a grueling time with the pandemic. I think they're looking for something different. I think the old playbook, as exciting as it is for those of us that are kind of in it up to our eyeballs all the time, I think people are looking for security. I think they're looking for resiliency. I think they're looking for empathy. They want real plans. They want real progress. And they don't want to see politicians lobbing bombs at each other and pointing fingers and arguing all the time. I understand all of that's part of the system. But for me, Andrea Horvath and Doug Ford can spend all of their time between now and June 2nd of next year obsessing and focusing on me if they want to. That's fine. That's part of this business. I will remain exclusively focused on the nearly 15 million people who call this province home and their future. And that's why I ran for leader, and that's why I'm running for premier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there are no other questions on the line. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.